Okay, good morning everyone and a very warm welcome to this morning's session. I'm Susie Marston, BT's Head of Public Sector in Wales, and I'm really genuinely excited to kick off the conversation from fibre to 5G, the path to a seamlessly connected and sustainable Wales. So we all know that connectivity is no longer a luxury. It's an absolute necessity, whether that be accessing healthcare remotely, running a business from a rural village in Wales, or simply staying in touch with our loved ones. Digital infrastructure underpins almost every aspect of modern day life. And here in Wales, we're on a journey to make that infrastructure faster, smarter, and greener. But at the same time, we're investing really heavily in the future, from full fibre rollouts to the expansion of 5G. We're building the digital infrastructure that Wales needs to thrive. Closing that digital divide is central to our mission, and 5G plays a key role in that. This means faster speeds, greater capacity at peak times, and a foundation for innovation that achieves a more connected and sustainable Wales. But we're not just focused on coverage and on speed, we're asking the big questions. How do we do this sustainably? And how do we roll out the networks so that we're not competing with our climate goals? And at BT, we're very proud to be working with partners across Wales, such as Cardiff Capital Region, Growing Mid Wales, Ambition North Wales, and Swansea City Deal. They're helping us answer these questions as we roll out fibre and mobile connectivity that's not only reliable and inclusive, but also aligned to the circular economy principles and powered by renewable energy. It's about building the infrastructure that will last and that will lift up every part of Wales. So today, I'm joined by 4 fantastic speakers who are right at the heart of this digital transformation in Wales. So rather than introduce them myself, I'll hand over to each of them to tell you a little bit more about their role and what they're doing to transform Wales. So I'll start with you, Sarwar.
Yeah, that's working. So I'm Sarwar Khan, I'm the Sustainability Director at BT. Prior to joining BT, I've worked in the energy sector for 12 years. Predominantly working with pension funds in the Nordics to accelerate decarbonisation technologies, including onshore and offshore wind. Within BT, my responsibility is to work with our public sector customers and major corporates to support in the transition to net zero and reduce the impact of e-waste and drive a circular economy.
Thank you, Sarwar. Sally?
Hi, good morning, everyone. So Sally Fuller. So I head up mobile for BT Business. I also chair the Sustainability Forum, which is a collaborative forum across BT Business and with partners to drive sustainability expertise and partnership. Sarwar actually executes it all brilliantly. So, and I ironically run the AI Forum as well, which sounds a little bit in competition, but AI's got quite a lot of smart ideas for us, so we're adopting that. I think in terms of the Welsh work, we're doing a lot of work across the public sector, into health, into transport, into emergency services, into rural connectivity, environmental affairs, environmental support, but also working with an ecosystem of partners because the network's only half the experience. The device and the services on the device are obviously actually how things really happen for our people out there, alongside IoT, sensors and other connectivity. So we've got that whole ecosystem with our partners and how we can make sure it's secure, compliant, reliable to deliver to people that at the end of it are doing some pretty cutting edge, fragile jobs. And we're really excited to be here today and see the excitement across the Welsh ambition.
Thanks, Sally. Mike?
Hi, and I'm Mike Bruff. I'm Director for Regional Growth for Cardiff Capital Region. I look after the vast majority of our investments across the region. We're here to try and grow the economy, but also grow it in a very sustainable way. So primarily, it's about jobs, leverage, GVA, the things that are going to help people have improved lives. But we're looking for a fair, stronger and greener economy. So the part of that is around the net zero transition as well.
Morning, everyone. I'm Stu Higgins. I'm from Cisco. I'm a strategic AI advisor, which, as Sally said, sounds a little bit of a challenge to a sustainability panel, but I'm also a sustainability ambassador for Cisco. So trying to balance those two is part of my day-to-day life. I've been involved in and around Wales since the first iteration of PSBA. Cisco do a lot with our partners like BT, not only around the technology, but also things like digital skills. So our Net Academy program helps to train people to understand how to use these things. So as well as the technology itself, it's giving people the expertise to be able to take advantage of those as well.
Thank you. So thanks again for joining us this morning. So we're going to dive into the conversation now. And Mike, I'm going to start with you. So how do you see improvements in digital connectivity helping the residents and businesses within the Cardiff Capital Region? And what specifically is Cardiff Capital Region doing to drive that digital prosperity?
Thanks, Susie. So I think to try and answer that, I'm going to talk about sort of 4 areas in terms of my response. So the first is around sort of a bit about CCR and about what we do and why we're here. A little bit about some of the things we've actually delivered in the space you've discussed. A little bit about our sort of forward planning, actually what's coming next. And then a little bit about sort of actual real future activities that forward plan is going to lead into. So it's kind of odd because I've been with CCR about 3 years in total and a few months in this job. But CCR is actually almost 10 years old. It's in a couple of months' time, it'll be 10 years since the City Deal Agreement was signed, which is the thing that brought CCR into being. And that was quite a huge moment in terms of the region, and that's what brought a significant amount of investment. There was £1.3 billion worth of investment tied to that City deal. About 800 million of that has gone into the metro system, so a huge connectivity piece. And then the rest of that has been endowed to us to actually transform the region in terms of bringing jobs and growth. I think to go back to those very first days, though, we had 3 core sort of principles that the City deal was built upon. Number 1 was connected, so still relevant today as it was then. The second one was about being competitive. And the third one was about being resilient, and oddly they are CCR, connected, competitive, resilient. But those still stand true today. And I think it's really important that we've kept those kind of principles with us all the way through. So what are the kind of things that we've done in order to embed those in the region? Have been, one, a real focus on core priority sectors. And actually, it was great to hear the Under-Secretary of State for Wales earlier on, because she actually did a lot of the pitch for me. There was a lot of the innovation and investments that she talked about are actually the things that CCR have been doing from day one, which is really fascinating. And it's great to hear they're becoming embedded. Some things like Cyber Innovation Hub, our investments through our investment capital fund to places like Transcend. And so we've got a lot of really good companies that we've invested in that sort of innovation space. But we have also invested in infrastructure, and I think infrastructure is where we need to think about for today. We've done a lot around transport infrastructure, so we've got £40 million going into Cardiff Central Station, and that movement of people is really important because that kind of free movement of people allows people to access jobs, services, and the likes, in a much easier way, which is important for how we kind of build growth into the region. We've got a lot of investment around Metro Plus. So, the £800 million and the nearly £1 billion now that Welsh Government are put into Metro. We've actually invested in and around the stations to actually make it more accessible. And again, that's partly about this kind of connectivity piece, but in a more sort of physical connectivity. We've done a lot around fibre, actually. So we are investing through Oggy, who's a business that's here today. We've invested £45 million to put fibre in some of the most hard-to-reach places in the northern valleys. Some of the places where we know struggle to get that kind of connectivity that we all kind of live and expect to see. And we've also done some physical investments in big opportunities. So our compound semiconductor cluster, which Under Secretary of State mentioned. So one of the first interventions that CCR did was about purchased a building called the Foundry in Imperial Park, which has become the epicenter of this world's first compound semiconductor cluster. And all of that is built upon strong connectivity and digital connectivity. None of these kind of new industries and this innovation and these investments would make any sense without the fact that that strong kind of backbone of connectivity is there and underpins it. And I think that's always going to be important for us and always something that we're really going to focus our efforts on. I think very quickly we've got a couple of other areas around planning that are probably quite interesting. So two other elements of what CCR does is around our strategic development plan and our regional transport plan. Those two things actually, when it comes to connectivity and future and sustainability, are going to be huge. They're about actually how we move people and goods in terms of regional transport planning and invest in roads and infrastructure. But actually the strategic development plans are real potential to be a game changer. We've got 10 local authorities that make up our partnership. And each of those has what's called a local development plan, which talks about everything that's going to happen in that area. And that's great. But if we look at that on a regional level, we can start to really map out where we need that new connectivity coming forward, where we need energy infrastructure to facilitate new homes, new business, and that digital connectivity. I think so that sort of planning piece for us, I think should be a really good tool in this space to really look at the future and go, okay then, so now we know we're going to have X number of houses and businesses here. What does that mean for connectivity and what are the technologies that we can bring that are more sustainable and help us on that sort of net zero journey? And then I'll very quickly I'll talk about this maybe in a little bit later on, but we've got a huge amount of opportunity ahead of us. The Under Secretary of State there said about we've just been awarded at least £30 million under our Local Innovation Partnership Fund. That's for scale-up businesses, spin-outs from universities, the opportunities to develop new tech, new opportunities, new things in that sort of net zero AI space is fantastic. We've got our investment zone, which is £160 million focused on 3 sites across Cardiff, Newport. And again, that's really focusing in on compound semi and new technology. So we've got levers and opportunities here to really drive change, drive innovation, and kind of help move that sustainability agenda forward.
Perfect. Thank you, Mike. And I think from BT's perspective, we're really excited to be talking to Cardiff Capital Region deal around how we can support with those innovative use cases and deliver on those system outcomes for Cardiff. So thank you. Moving on now, Sawa, and we're just starting to think about accelerating digitalisation. I'm interested in what the environmental impact is on that rollout of FTTP and 4G, 5G.
Yes, I guess the starting point and the good news is FTTP, from a technology perspective, and at its core, is much more energy efficient compared to what we have today in terms of the copper infrastructure. Without going too much into the depths of the core engineering, FTTP uses less energy in terms of something called signal attenuation, so less energy required to manage the transmission of the signals across the line. And it also has less resistance along the line, which is a key component in terms of the energy consumption for FTTP. So as a whole, the technology itself is more sustainable from an energy efficiency perspective. However, it does come with a caveat, and the caveat is it depends on capacity and utilization. And it's very rare we tend to say this, but it's far more sustainable to stress the network. So what does that mean? We need more people using the network more times of the day. So that's what makes it much more efficient from a capacity perspective. Now, in terms of Wales, we've got 69% coverage in terms of FTTP now, which is above the UK average, which is around 66%. However, the uptake in terms of fast fibre directly within the premises stands at around 38%. So there's still a gap in terms of FTTP infrastructure being in place, but the uptake in terms of businesses and consumers utilizing that capacity. And that leaves us with a gap in terms of the carbon footprint, because effectively organizations who are already on FTTP are paying for the carbon footprint associated with those who still remain on copper. So a bit of a job to do in terms of getting more people off the legacy networks and onto full fiber. When it comes to mobile, a very similar story. So at its core, the technology itself is far more efficient. Just to put it into perspective, 3G, we got around 3% of all data volume on the 3G network, but consuming 35% of energy. So a third for just 3% of data use. And that's the transition to 5G, which will very dramatically change that. So 5G itself comes with technology which is a lot smarter in terms of being able to look at utilization across the network. So capacity, applications, traffic trends and patterns and so on. And it can, there's a software directly within the RAN capability which can help optimize the way the network runs based on utilization. And that's what effectively makes it much more efficient. So both of those technologies inherently from an engineering perspective are a lot more sustainable. On top of that, probably 80% of the carbon footprint associated with both technologies is directly in terms of the energy consumption. So the good news is specifically within Wales, 53% of the demand is met through renewable energy today. The plan is 70% by 2030 and 100% by 2035. And that's really exciting because that's 15 years ahead of the government's ambition to be net zero by 2050. So there's real potential there. As we roll out digital through FTTP and 5G, we marry that with the growth of renewables specifically within Wales, and we've got a sustainable digitalization play there. So it's a real growth opportunity across both sectors for Wales.
Thank you, Sawa. Exciting times, 15 years ahead. Okay, so let's move on now to think about sustainability at the infrastructure level, Stu. So how can the network itself be leveraged to ensure that applications and services are also delivered sustainably? And what can both private and public sector organisations do to ensure they operate with sustainability front of mind?
Okay, I'm going to start somewhere I didn't think I was going to, but based on what Sawa was saying, being the AI guy on stage, you know, everywhere you go outside, every stand out there, everybody will be talking about AI. AI is about data, and data is about the network, and networks enable AI. So it's really important that the infrastructure across the country is up to the task of moving large amounts of data to where it's needed and where it can do the most good. And connectivity is one of the biggest levers for digital sustainability, partly because of that. But sustainable networks also enable more sustainable services. So you've got to ensure, and if you think about it, almost no infrastructure in data centers today is built for an AI world. So there's a huge amount that needs to change across architectures to enable people to take advantage of the amazing technologies that are out there that people are developing to enable things to work in a much more efficient way. You know, Sawa's example of 3G versus 5G is a really good example that, you know, my mum and dad had a 20-year-old freezer, and when they put a new one in, their energy bills dropped through the floor, even though they thought it was perfectly fine and working and keeping food cold. The same's true of the network. By updating it, you're going to gain advantage of new technology and new innovations that have come into being. So things like routing traffic through greener data centers would make a massive difference. Using edge compute. So although the network's really important, also you can do a lot of computation within an environment. So rather than shifting data up and down a country because you need to move it back to a central place, one way to take advantage, not just filling the networks more fully with data, but also keep data local when you can, to take advantage of the faster compute, the fact that you can respond more quickly to requirements. And then something really simple, turn things off that you're not using. So there's lots of capacity in some parts of the country that aren't being used, but people just leave them on. So you again using intelligent network infrastructure to say, I'm only using half the wireless infrastructure at night, why don't I turn the other half off? I'm not needing to use all of those connections between different places, why don't I reduce the number for certain parts of the day and turn it on as demand requires it? But I think the biggest shift's transparency. The problem is that unless you know how much you're using, you don't know how much you can save. So being transparent, asking suppliers to be transparent, measuring and exposing carbon costs of digital services. And if you do that, it means that as people develop new services, they can develop them to take advantage and be more sustainable and be more efficient. I mean, you can't decarbonize what you can't measure. And working with BT, they've got a fantastic carbon calculator that helps you look at what the network's using and a lot more, and see how sustainable you are and where you could get to. I think you've got to build sustainability in service level agreements as well. Make demands of your suppliers. Ask them if they're sustainable. Don't work with people that aren't sustainable, that don't have, whether it's CDA accreditation or EcoVadis scores or other recognised sustainable measures, and make sure that when they say they're sustainable, they can prove it. So Cisco, for instance, we use circular design in all our products and services. So everything that we design, we're looking at it from a reuse and repurposing perspective right across our very broad portfolio of products and services. And I challenge everybody, whether it's catering, whether it's technology, whether it's legal services, make sure the companies you're working with are doing the same thing. I think I'll leave it there.
Thank you, Stu. So thinking about BT, we have a responsibility, Sally. We've got millions of customers using our services and end user devices. What are we doing as BT and EE to ensure we minimise those environmental impacts as these devices become more and more embedded in our everyday lives?
Sure, thank you. So I just got to talk about a couple of things. So a little bit like Stu's freezer, an old device isn't very efficient. It's going to take a lot of energy and recharge. They're often not made out of recyclable or reusable material. So getting long life out of them is good, but you've got to trade that off where they're not going to perform very well. And if you've got an underperforming device, you've actually got an inefficient, unsatisfied, unhappy worker, which has another impact. So we know a good device can help be more productive and more efficient. We know a good mobile network can contribute to better transport, better route planning, better use of public transport, better management of productive jobs. But the thing is, at the end of that device's useful life for your purpose, what do you do with it? So we encourage every single device to be recycled. And we do that in a number of ways. We'll literally roll up with a bus. And if it's a secure establishment, we'll take those devices in, we'll securely wipe them, and every single device will then go back to be assessed. Can it be refurb and reused in a secondary market and graded and securely and properly have another life? So new to someone else is new. Does it have to instead be completely recycled? In which case we will make sure that device is completely taken apart and every single element of it is recycled and goes back in to make something else. We do the same thing with accessories and cables, do the same thing with casing, and everything we supply, we work with our partner ecosystem to make sure that the circularity of that device and everything that comes with it can be fully managed. Now, if you do that to 500 devices, you get the equivalent of about 24 to 28,000 kilograms of carbon is saved and reused, which is about 38 households, the power of about 38 households a year, or 100,000 miles driven. Now, we in the UK as an industry sell over 30 million devices. So imagine what it means if every single one of those, instead of clogging up a drawer, instead of being poorly managed, instead of not being part of the circularity system, comes back in and is properly managed and properly reused. It saves a lot of money because it makes sure that new to someone else is a second life. It's actually got better utility. So all the emissions that came from producing that device in the first place actually get spread across a better lifetime if that's feasible. But it also makes sure that the carbon footprint of the organisations using it comes down. So we absolutely encourage organisations when they're procuring to really put an emphasis on social value, increase the social value from the default 10, take it up to 15% or more. An organisation that did that brilliantly is DEFRA. And DEFRA are very driven about how they use mobility to do pollution awareness, to use drones for pollution scanning, to obviously look at environmental management, and to manage the environment so our parks and every part of the countryside is environmentally supportive. we recently moved 34,000 of their staff across to us, and a big reason for them moving to us was because of our environmental credentials. So not only is device circularity a big part of their agenda, but the other thing that we did for them is every single person we rolled out a mobile device to, we did it using eSIM. So it takes, the way we do eSIM in mobile in BT is it takes about 15 seconds. We literally just send a little pop-up. The user clicks on it, they're on our network. So there's no friction, there's no effort for the user, there's no loss of productivity, there's no delay getting onto the network, whether or not they're switching networks or whether or not they're adopting a new device or a new user to the organization. But that eSIM technology, which we proudly invested in because of its sustainability credentials, means that every single device we rolled out to every single user saved 99% of their carbon footprint. Now, over 5 years, that also meant DEFRA saved £6 million. So it was good for business, it was good for environment, and actually it was really good and really joyful for the staff of DEFRA because they could be more productive more quickly on a great network. So it's building that win-win model that we think is really important. The other thing we do is, again, with our partners, so organisations like Apple and Samsung, we would encourage devices to be brought as a service, so buy them on a leasing agreement, which forces the good behaviour of looking after it, forces the good conduct that this device is going to go on to someone else, so put a screen protector on it, look after it, it's just yours for a little while, and then recycle it at the end of its lease agreement. And that makes it really affordable as well. And then we top up with things like enhanced trade-in. So again, recognizing that device has a lifetime value. So it's not really about the cost of the device, it's almost the cost per use of the device that matters in that model, which again creates the right approach to affordability and sustainability.
Thank you, Sally. So just moving on now, Sawa, with your innovation hat. And thinking about future opportunities in the sustainability space, what emerging technologies or practices excite you the most in accelerating decarbonisation for Wales?
Great question. I guess the first one, and I've been learning about Wales myself. I'm a Yorkshire lad, so I'm trying to get up to speed in terms of Wales and the great tech that you have here, actually. The first one that really struck me was the Welsh Digital Twins Network. Mm-hmm. I talked a bit about my background being in offshore and onshore wind. One of the big barriers to deploying renewable energy globally actually is grid capacity. It's making sure the grids are smart enough, have the latest technology to enable this new technology to go online sooner. Now, the Welsh Digital Twins Network is a pioneering capability that brings together both public and private collaboration to bring planning and simulation using virtualization and data to do something called demand planning. And that's really key because if we're going to have Wales 100% renewables by 2035, we need to make sure that we take the grid along the same journey. They have to go hand in hand, otherwise you've got renewables moving faster, but you can't connect them to the grid. So the Welsh Digital Twin Network is a really exciting prospect because it brings both of the grid and the renewables together. So that's one really interesting technology, and there's a heavy dependency on good connectivity there because you need to have a high throughput of data to help create the simulation and do the planning, etc., associated with it. The other one, which is maybe closer to home and just picking up on the topic of circularity, is an AI application called Litter Lotto. And in fact, it was my wife who introduced me to it because I'm really bad at recycling. I'm always putting the wrong thing in the wrong bins and I just end up getting told off. So she said, oh, download Litter Lotto. And effectively, Litter Lotto is an application where you can take a picture of your rubbish before you put it in and it tells you which bin to put it in. And you get entered into a lottery at the end of the week where you have the potential for winning a prize. So the great news is it's already being utilized by Welsh residents. And although it sounds fun, of course it's definitely fun, but the actual objective behind it is to reduce the cost for the council, because there's a lot of rubbish that ends up in the wrong bin, which means that the council has to pay extra in terms of the sorting facilities, and with that comes additional energy use. and there is a carbon footprint associated with that. But the ultimate objective of Little Lotto is to increase awareness of circularity. It's to help people understand the benefits of recycling, what goes where, etc. And I think that's a really, really powerful use case that drives benefits for citizens, but also directly for the councils as well.
Top tip. I'll definitely be looking into Little Otto. Thank you, Sawa. So throughout these next 3 days, AI is obviously been central to the conversation. And Stu, I'm going to come to you around the announcement that Wales will receive not 1, but 2 AI growth zones. So with the rise of IoT and AI-driven services, how do we balance that innovation with sustainability, but also with a lens on the security concerns?
It's a great question, and it's a really simple answer. I think you've got to design sustainability and security in right from the start. Not the problem. The brilliant thing about innovative people is they have a single-minded view to solve a problem. What that sometimes means is they don't always think about the broader implications of what they're doing. So if I'm a fantastic tech designer who's seen an issue that I want to solve, maybe I'm not thinking about cybersecurity. That means retrofitting that afterwards can be very complicated and expensive and difficult. So if you design those things in right from the start, and also things like, you know, if you're putting batteries into an IoT device that's going to be on the top of a lamppost, how do you maintain it? I did some work around smart lighting a few years ago, and to go up a lamppost to change a device, it's over £1,000 per lamppost. So if you can figure out a way of making those devices easy to update or to use different ways of powering them, you can change how you develop them right from the start. But you need to do it from the start, and it's one of those things that you've got to really think through, maybe bring expertise in from outside. You know, lots of large tech companies have innovation hubs, they have incubators, they're delighted to help, because if they help you when you're a small company, if you turn into the next big thing, then they're part of that journey and will benefit from that as well. I think it's, building it in from the start is really important.
Okay.
You've also got to think about how you look at governance. So how do you make things, not only design the security in and the sustainability, but how do you make sure that there are clear rules for how you'd consume data, how you'd use it, how you protect people from themselves, which sounds crazy, but there's lots of companies have rolled out AI solutions from lots of organizations and not taught their staff how to use them. And then they're wondering why IP is getting out into large language models, and it's because you've given me a fantastic tool and then not told me not to share private data more broadly, or more frighteningly, if it's personally identifiable information and you're sharing that into a large language model, then it's out there for everybody to make use of. So putting the guardrails in place right from the start is really important. But having things within the region also enables you to think about stuff like cost control and sovereignty. You know, if Wales has 2 AI growth zones, the fact that you're going to be able to keep things very local and make use of that, but also protect it and keep it private when it needs to be, is really important. So I think simply it's design it in from the start and think about it all the way through, and keep challenging yourselves. Is it sustainable? Are we using the right sort of everything from the chipset to the design of the packaging to how you ship it, the logistics? The eSIM's a brilliant example. If it's 99% less carbon affecting to do it that way, why would you ever put a physical device into something else that's only going to last a few years? So thinking it through right from the start,
Thank you, Stu. That's a really good answer. So, Mike, just going back now from a Cardiff Capital Region deal perspective, we've been working together to deliver improvements in mobile and broadband coverage. That's one thing. But beyond infrastructure, what steps can be taken to ensure digital skills and adoption keep pace with these connectivity improvements?
Yeah, thanks, Susie. And I think that for us, skills is huge. It's a thing that's going to underpin everything that we do going forward. And it makes such a difference. The opportunity for both our residents to take advantage of these AI growth zones, these defence growth zones, and all the different kind of things I've talked about. It's massive, and the more we can keep locally in terms of people, the bigger benefit all round, and that kind of sustainability piece plays right through it, because people are travelling less, they're staying local, they're being successful. I think I'll give a couple of examples of things we've done, and then I'll talk a little bit about things we're going to do. So we've had a really successful venture graduate scheme, which is a scheme that was basically about retaining graduates in the region. And that's been something that we ran for several years, and we've got hundreds of local graduates and graduates from other parts of the country coming to locate into the region. And that's been fantastic, both for us in terms of keeping that slowing down that brain drain, but also growing our economy and growing some of these big sectors of strength for us. We need talented people to be able to do that. So that's one, and that program's actually been taken over or run by now a private sector entity, because it was such a success. We stopped funding it, but actually they've carried on delivering it, which is great news. So that's called Venture Graduates. It's still available online if anyone's interested in that, if you're looking for graduates in the region. The second one is another example. We've got a program called the AI Enable program that we run with Tramshed Tech, and that's about getting small businesses into using AI in a really meaningful way. So, Stu's mentioned there some of the kind of pitfalls of AI, but actually the benefits for small business could be huge. So we're on our second cohort of that. We've actually attracted some further funding from DBT to deliver even more. So that's something that's going to potentially grow significantly, only enhanced by the AI growth zone announcement recently as well. So it's fantastic. We're trying to get a little bit ahead of that there. So that's the kind of couple of things that we've been doing to grow skills and keep people kind of local, hopefully. The investment zone, our £160 million investment zone, a big chunk of that's going to be around skills. And it's primarily going to be around, the compound semiconductor cluster and new technology in this kind of southern part of our region. But if I give you a small example of where actually that can be pushed right out to the kind of outermost boundaries of our region, we've been working closely with KLA, which is one of the big investors into the region recently. They've built a new facility in Newport Imperial Park, employing up to 750 people. I think they're in the 600s now, so it's really growing and going really well. But actually, we did just a small piece of work with them to map out where their employees actually live, and 90% of their employees live within 30 miles of that factory. And if you look at a map of our region, you can see it's beautiful. It's a thing to behold, because it's actually everything that we talk about. They're all in our region, but it shows to us, if we do the right skills training in the right places, in places like Merthyr, Blaenau Gwent, Monmouth, Bridgend, those places actually can feed into these high-powered, high-strength jobs in other parts of the region, and that's going to be critical, which is where our transport investment comes in. You look at what we're doing in transport, it's about getting people to the right places in a sustainable way, but also digital connectivity, because so many more people are working from home now. The opportunity to do that, and I must give a shout out, we're doing some work with TFW Fibre at the moment, because they've got some fibre infrastructure along their railway line that we could potentially open up to use for getting to harder to reach places that the railway track already goes to. So we're doing, we've got a lot of different interventions and things all layering up to giving opportunity to local people.
Thank you, Mike. That was very insightful, and from a retention perspective and retaining talent in Wales, that is a top agenda item for BT currently as well. So in the interest of time, before I open up to questions from the audience, have a think about any questions you'd like to put to the panel. I'm just going to do a quick fire round. Now, 60 seconds for each of you. And Sally, I'm going to start with you. If you could change one policy or regulation tomorrow to accelerate sustainable connectivity in Wales, what would that be?
One's difficult. I think it's got to start with the level of renewables energy that we're using. I'd probably try and be more ambitious on renewable. If I could choose another one, because I think that was quite brief.
Yeah, still got 30.
Okay, thank you. I think I would also really drive, we've used the word a lot, and I think collaboration is really important, because with collaboration comes inspiration and innovation, but really driving collaboration and incentives around circularity. Vinted's done it beautifully. There's a lot to be learned from Vinted, but that sense of circularity and renewable and driving collaboration incentives around that would be the other one that I'd add, because it's more visible and more engaging than just, you know, improving renewables.
Thank you. I'm a huge Vinted fan, so I second that. Sawa?
I guess in the 60 seconds, I'll build on Sally's point. As you can probably tell, I'm very pro renewable energy. So I'd like to see, it's not necessarily a policy ask, but an incentive from government. When I think of Wales, and my 4-year-old asked me this, you know, apart from where is Wales, what do you know about Wales? I said, I think of nature when it comes to Wales. There's so many natural resources in Wales. I'd like to see continued investment into Wales to take advantage of the Celtic Sea, to take a leadership role in offshore wind here in Wales, to power the future of the AI growth zones. That's what we'd like to see. We've already seen some investment in terms of the small modular reactors, the first one in the UK here in Wales. That's super exciting. So we've got to continue that momentum and drive growth in 2 sectors, clean energy and AI for Wales.
Perfect. Thank you, Sawa. Back to Mike.
I'm going to take a little bit of a cop-out, because I wonder if we've just had it. We've just had the AI growth zone announced, actually, and I wonder if that's maybe the policy that could really drive some innovation and change. The 4 key bits that I can take away from that, it's about faster grid connections. Who wouldn't want that? Bringing down energy prices. My goodness, who wouldn't want that? Reducing planning barriers. Again, you know, just critical to success and driving innovation and growth. And finally, opportunities to raise skills, so that piece we just talked about underpinning. So I think, you know, it's a bit of a cop-out, but I feel like maybe if we just take full advantage of that thing that's just happened, we could really transform Wales and South Wales specifically.
Thank you, Mike. And finally, Stu, 60 seconds.
Yeah, I'll build on the planning point. I'd do something really simple. I'd introduce a dig one, share always policy. Whenever anybody's putting any ducting in the ground, they put in space for fibre, they put in space for modern technology, whether it's a small housing development or a very large city centre change, or whether you're running stuff down the edge of a road in the middle of nowhere, make it so that there's ducting available and that ducting can be shared. So change the rules so that whenever a spade goes in the ground, you dig it once, and then you put it on an asset map so people know where that is and everybody has access to it. So no more, I work for X, it's my duct, you put your own in next to mine. Why don't we just share them, and it'll move things along super quick.
Makes a lot of sense. Okay, thank you. So I'm just going to open up for questions to the floor. So if anybody's got any questions you'd like to put to the panel. Gentleman at the back there.
Hi, my name is Mike Morris. I'm Leaf Portalba Council, Swansea-based City Deal. Question for Sawa. I think you mentioned the figures of the take-up of the fibre broadband. It's still quite low. So what do you think is holding that back?
We alluded to a little bit. I think Mike talked about the skills agenda. I think in the Welsh population, 25% of the Welsh population is classified as having low digital literacy. So I think that's one major barrier. The other one is small businesses. So around 50% of Welsh small businesses don't know where to get started on the digitalization journey, specifically with regards to cloud and AI. I think those are the 2 key barriers that we need to address to begin with. I think one of the solutions which was raised earlier, I think Sally touched on it as well, is around social value and thinking about, you know, how do we interact at the right touch points within Wales. So one could be school leavers. You know, that's where one big area is where digital skills seems to be a particular gap. So could we accelerate that through apprenticeship schemes and leveraging the centralized apprenticeship levy? But also within the social value schemes, there should be a role for any organization through the public sector and private sector collaboration to ensure that they're playing a role in terms of helping upskill schools, colleges, all the way through to small businesses. I think for me, that's probably one of the biggest opportunities actually to get more people onto fast fibre, utilizing the technology to drive better outcomes.
Thank you, Sawa.
Don't know if anyone else wants to add to that.
No? Did I see another hand up at the front? Oh, yes, just there at the front. Thank you.
Tracy Sweet from Cardiff Capital Region. Two quick questions, really. One, when is copper going to be switched off? Is it still 2027?
January 2027.
27.
Yes, but obviously we're looking to encourage organisations to bring that journey forward as much as possible.
Right. And the second question is, working in industry, we were looking at photonics for 10G and 25G technologies. What are BT's plans for faster communications, basically?
So we've announced quite a lot of ambition in terms of full 5G coverage for everyone in the nation in the next, I think by 28, and then 5G SA coverage by 2030. And that will bring mobile broadband as well. If you go to our stand, you'll see a really nice portable network with it's got a cradle point router for techie people, but it's got a Starlink antennae with it. And the nice thing about using that cradle point router with a Starlink antenna is you can get really good quality connection. Satellite to mobile, it's not a great quality connection because that mobile receiver is just not a very powerful receiver when it's getting signals from space. Whereas Starlink to that hub is a really good quality connection. So that is a very reliable solution if you need rapid connectivity. So if there's been a connectivity outage or if there's not connectivity there yet, and you're building a new site or building a new facility, but also if you need permanent connectivity before we can get all our ducts shared and all our fibre built. And we are spending, 700 million or something equivalent in Wales reaching those hard to reach places. But mobile's a really good alternative. But when we get into the 5G SA rollout, which means 5G standalone, that's bringing along new technologies. That will cause a bit of a supercharge to things like automation in big ports, in transport hubs, in big buildings, in stadiums, like Nick mentioned earlier. And the reason why that's appealing is it will make the digital dependency fully supported, but also fully secure and fully protected. We know that each one of those highly intense locations is under attack. They're very attractive places for bad actors. So with that 5G SA technology, we bring along a level of protection and security, as well as enabling a high degree of automation and what we would call active intelligence about who, what, where, that supports sustainability ambitions, as well as safety and other activities that get consumed through the mobile network. So there's quite a lot of, I've been in the industry a long time, this is about as exciting as it gets for the geeks with what's happening now and what we're making possible to happen.
Thank you, Sally. So in the interest of time, I'm just going to conclude now. So I just wanted to thank all of our speakers and everybody who joined the discussion today. We've covered the challenges, the opportunities, and the steps that we need to take together. This isn't just about technology. It's about shaping a future where connectivity drives inclusion for a sustainable Wales. Now, we'd love to continue the conversation over at our stand E3. Sawa and Sally will be on hand to dive deeper into the conversations, and we will talk to you a bit more about our smart, sustainable solutions propositions as well. So thank you all, and thanks for your time.